Hey pals, I'm here today to talk about one of my favourite reads of the year, and that is The Arsonist City by Halia Al-Yan. I started talking about this in my July reading wrap-up, and I realised I just wanted to spend so much more time talking about this book and encouraging other people to pick it up because I just absolutely adored it. So this is a family drama. I would say that family dramas and coming-of-age stories are like my two top favourite themes, plots, whatever you want to call them, and this is like a family drama at its absolute best. One of my favourite structures in a novel is multiple POV, and I think multiple POV in family dramas just is perfection, and yeah, I just adored this. So the premise. So this book opens with a short prologue. You don't know what time period it's set, but it seems to be not the present day, and it is in a refugee camp in Beirut, and you watch a Palestinian man be pulled out of his home and executed by a group of men for something he's been involved in. You then jump forward to present day US and you see a mother call each of her children, and you get a perspective from each of her adult children in turn, and then also you get perspectives from the mother. So the novel is majority told from those four perspectives. The three adult children have very different lives. So the oldest daughter is a university professor. She's very successful. She's got a couple of young children and she's married to a white man, and she is struggling because she's found out that her husband was recently sort of having an affair, but she's decided to stay with him. And she is the person who sort of holds the family together and sort of calms down any conflict, really. Then the son is clearly the favourite child, and he was trying all his life to be a successful musician, like a rock star, and just hasn't had many successes, and so instead works in a restaurant. And then the youngest daughter, Naj, is actually a very successful rock star back in Beirut, where they're from. So she went back to Beirut to study and never left, and she basically lives back there. The parents met each other in Beirut, but the mother is actually from Damascus and the father is from Beirut. The mother's calling all three of these children because the father is deciding to sell the ancestral home in Beirut, which has been left empty for over a year since his father died, but the housekeeper has been looking after it. He thinks it's time to sell. His wife completely disagrees, even though she's always hated this house and hated visiting it. So that doesn't really make sense. So she asks if the three children will all meet in Beirut at the house to try and dissuade their father from selling it, but also they've decided to do a memorial for their grandfather who passed away a year ago because they didn't all make his funeral. And so all these family members converge in this one house. There's lots of people, lots of unsaid things. This book is filled with secrets. There's lots of things that each of these characters don't know about one another, or one of them knows it about the other one, but they don't know, the other one doesn't know that the other one knows it, if that makes sense. Some of them know some things about their parents. Their mother has a ton of secrets. A big portion of this book in the centre goes back to her childhood. We go all the way back to 1965 in Damascus. And we follow her growing up and how she met their father in Beirut, especially, this was a time of conflict in Beirut. She shouldn't really have been crossing the borderline. It wasn't really a safe thing to do, and how that came to be. And then you also watch the mother when they first get to the US and as she has each child in turn. Initially, when I got to the section where you go back in time, I was I don't know, I'm really loving the present. I'm loving all these characters. And when I say loving them, they're not all lovely people. In fact, they're all very deeply flawed and they all have personality traits that aren't likeable, but yet they're also fascinating, and all their personality traits are forgivable because when you hear about their life, it makes complete sense why they are how they are. But when you go back in time to the mother's story, like I said, I was initially a little bit worried. I absolutely adored her perspective, and she is 100% my favourite character. She's called Musna, and she is wonderful. She wants to be an actress, and she's a very talented actress when she's a young woman. And she's sort of, one of the things that persuades her to marry their father is that she knows he is training to be a doctor and he's going to move to California, and so she thinks she'll be nearer to all the film star buzz, and that will really help her. And one of the great tragedies of this book is that when the book opens, you know that she has never featured in any films in the US, and her career just never went anywhere, and you have to sort of go back in time and watch all those dreams fall around her, and it is devastating for her. I really felt for her. She's a very difficult character, a really funny character, but very difficult. But watching her story, you just completely understand all the sort of petty aspects of her personality. You completely get why she's like that, and her life story is heartbreaking, and the way she sort of raises each of her children separately is completely understandable when you know her story. And then having each of these children have their own stories and their own struggles, whether that's to do with their career or their relationships, I just adored. The commentary in this book is brilliant. So there's a really big commentary on the idea that like the parents decided to leave these countries that had sort of ongoing conflicts, and yet one of the children has moved back there. There's a point when Masna says to Naj, like, you know, we gave you the American dream, we brought you to this wonderful country, like, why have you chosen to go back to this godforsaken country with all this conflict? So that's a really interesting commentary. And something else I really enjoyed in the book is there's a couple of instances from two different characters' perspectives when they talk about how they've got so used to being a brown person in the US who is also a brown person and inhabits that space of being from countries where there is a lot of conflict, but also countries that the US in general have a lot of opinions about, and how a lot of times they get to be like that sort of model minority in the room. They get to be the person who knows more, who has more experience, who has the right to comment on those things. And then going back to Beirut, after so many years of not living there, the ground really shifts under their feet, because actually in Beirut they're a very wealthy family who could afford to pay this black woman to leave her country and come over and be a live-in help. And like she'd get to see her family like once a year. She wasn't paid very much, and how suddenly they go from being, you know, the sort of model minority and being able to feel sort of above everybody else because of it, to that being completely reversed and feeling like, God, we're awful. Like this woman just like has to cook for us and do all this stuff for us, and like when does she see her family? I thought that was a really interesting discussion. There's a lot of discussion about being torn between two countries, and in the mother's perspective being torn between three countries, right? Because she grew up in Syria, but then meets her husband in Lebanon and then moves to the US, and she feels this pull to each of these countries for different reasons. A really big theme in this book is loss, the loss of a loved one, but also the loss of a dream, and that's really carried through Masna's story. She suffers an awful lot of losses, and that's why her story is so heartbreaking. But at the same time, this book is really warm. There's loads of wonderful moments between the siblings, even though there's a lot of conflict. Deep down, they all really get on with one another. There's this really nostalgic feel when they're around one another of like remembering their childhood. And I just adored this. Like I just would like everybody to read it. I think it's beautifully written. The descriptions are excellent. I think she really gives you an idea of each location, whether that be like a country, a neighbourhood or a room. I think she does that excellently. I loved all the food descriptions. There's lots of descriptions of them out at different gigs and like different music events that I really enjoyed. And yeah, I just adored this. I think all the characters are fantastic. And as you go further through the novel and more is revealed about this family's history, and you're sort of urging them all to have these honest conversations with one another, it's just a joy to watch it all unfold and to sort of have all this information drip fed to you. And the further you get through this novel, to understand all these people more. And yeah, I just adored it. I thought it was fantastic. I'd read anything she writes, and I truly believe this could be a phenomenal TV series. Imagine like how good Succession is, but just like obviously a completely different family, and like the themes would be quite different in terms of we're not looking at this big like business mogul family, but the like how tense some of those scenes can get, how witty and sharp those characters are. It really made me think of Succession in that sense, and I just adored this and like would love to reread it. One of the best family dramas I've ever read. Would love to hear more people talk about it. So let me know if you read this book. I'd love to hear your thoughts, who your favourite character is. Mine is hands down Masna, but like I really enjoy everyone. After her, I don't know who I'd say I enjoy like the most, because all of their storylines were so fantastic. But I just thought she was like a complete wonder and a fascinating character to watch. So yeah, really enjoyed her sections in particular. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear if you are planning to pick this one up based on my review. And yeah, just please do. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.